So hi and welcome to a latest edition of We Are Sunderland with myself, Scott Wilson and Dom Shaw. And a quick shout out as ever to our partners, the Fans Museum in Sunderland and to Cost Specs Opticians. If you're watching us on YouTube, then please subscribe, like, drop us a comment. That all helps with the old algorithm and hopefully gets it in front of more Sunderland fans' faces. And if you're listening on one of the various podcast platforms, then rate and review and drop us a comment. We're on X. We're also on Blue Sky now. And obviously, get yourself along to the We Are Sunderland website. Just £1 for 6 months of premium content. Right, Dom, you were at the Stadium of Light on Tuesday night. That's probably the starting point. Obviously, 0-0 with West Brom. Right. It's the classic, isn't it? Glass half full. Glass half empty. 10 games unbeaten and still very much in the thick of the automatic promotion battle. Or 5 games without a win, 3 in 5 without a goal, and now out of the top 2. Your answer's going to be a bit of both, isn't it? Where we sit?
No,
Where we sit?
It's not.
Where we sit?
How can I reword it instead of a bit of both? No, I think that the general feeling still has to be major positivity. And it was interesting, I thought, Regis Le Bris after Tuesday night's game was kind of keen to make that point. It's the first time I've been there when he's kind of said, look, we finished 16th last year. We need to...
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, we need to just remember the kind of first call for perspective I think we've seen from him this season. We need to remember where we are. But what was interesting was he also said that he has to make that point to the players. So it wasn't necessarily just the fans or us who were sat there. But he was saying, he was asked afterwards, is that the message you're saying to the players? And he said, well, yeah, but it's difficult because obviously they're frustrated. They're frustrated that they couldn't find a way through against West Brom on Tuesday night and that the drop points from winning positions against Millwall and Coventry. I think the frustration comes from the fact that in those 5 games, at Preston and QPR, they were poor. They should have beaten Coventry and Millwall, although a point in Millwall's a good result before, and clearly the way it plays out and the manner of the draw is disappointing. And I said before the game on Tuesday night, in isolation, if someone says to you, you'll get 2 draws at home to West Brom and away to Sheffield United, they're 2 really sound results, aren't they? The problem is they come after 4 draws previously. That's they've got 1 draw. Obviously, I'm not saying they're going to get a point on Friday night. But I still think, given the availability issues they've had in recent weeks, injuries, suspensions, I still think the picture's very, very positive. What are your thoughts? Where do you stand?
No, I agree. I mean, it's the classic football thing, isn't it, of keeping a balance and like you said, looking at the bigger picture and the longer term view, which you cannot say that Sunderland are not in a really good position in regard to that, to where we thought we'd be at the start of the season. Where it looked like the club might be heading at the back end of last season for most of the summer when, we needn't go through it all, but all the chaos, we all know about that. But the reality is that, fans have watched Sunderland be brilliant in the first 2 or 3 months of the season. They've seen them sat at the top of the league. We all have. So, while I do take Le Bris's point in the whole, that, there does have to be context. There does have to be, a view of where Sunderland have come from. You also can't ignore the fact that this was a team that sat at the top of the league for the best part of 2 or 3 months, have shown they're capable of beating any other team in the league. And, it comes back to where should Sunderland's ambition be right now? Well, you can make the argument that their ambition should be finishing in the top half because that would be progress from last season. But you can also make the view that their ambition has to be finishing in the top 2 because they've shown they're capable of doing that. Where's the balance there? I can see both sides of it, and I do think you need a bit of balance and a bit of context. But where we are right now, I think it'll be a massive disappointment if Sunderland don't finish in the top 6 from where they are now this season. And you can argue, well, that's ridiculous. They were 16th last year, whatever. Yeah, that's all fine. But this Sunderland side has shown that they're capable of mixing it with the very best in this league. Now, you know, we know there are issues with the squad. We're seeing that with the injury situation. But I still think it'll be a major disappointment if by the end of the season Sunderland aren't in the top 6. I think that's fair, don't you?
100%. I was going to say very similar, and I think for a couple of reasons, really. We've seen how effective and good Sunderland can be, but also I don't think anyone, as we've touched on in recent videos, I don't think there's any standout amazing teams in the Championship this season. And you look at the teams who Sunderland have played at the top. Got a point against Leeds, albeit in fortunate circumstances. Got a point against West Brom now. Beat Burnley, beat Middlesbrough. You go into Sheffield United on Friday. For all Sunderland are in this current run of draws, if you get a point on Friday, Bramall Lane. Again, like if you're to lead all game and conceding the 95th minute again, then clearly that's frustrating. But in general, a point at Bramall Lane would be deemed a positive result. But yeah, I 100% agree. I get where Le Bris is coming from, and I agree with him. I do think there's a and I think it was the right time to say it. But I don't think that's a point that can be laboured. I think that's a kind of right. Yeah, let's go for perspective. But you can't make that point in February if someone lose two games to slip out the top 2 or the top 6 or whatever. Yeah. But I agree. I think anything other than the top 6 finish now is a disappointment and a missed opportunity as well.
Is the major worry at the minute at the top end of the pitch? Because as I said, 3 games where Sunderland haven't scored. You can definitely make the argument that in the Coventry game, it's really 2 absolute worldies. Certainly the Sirkin goal, well, he's not going to score many of them in a season. Connolly's obviously scored with the shot from the edge of the box against Millwall. But, you know, I think the major worry for Sunderland coming into the season was lack of a striker. You know, where are the goals going to come from? Well, Isidore, you know, he had that real purple patch. And I'm not saying he's playing badly at the minute, but he's maybe starting to look a little bit like a player who's been shoehorned into being a number 9. Connolly has come in. He's done well. He is the experienced striker we're all talking about. But he hasn't done well enough to make himself a nailed-on starter yet, let alone kind of beyond that. Mayenda obviously exceeded expectations at the start of the season, but maybe is slipping back to kind of where we thought he was in terms of his career progression. Is that still a worry that you know, maybe there is a lack of goals still in this squad?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I don't think you can maybe judge. West Brom are really solid, really organised, aren't they? They're the masters of what they did on Tuesday night. I think they had the 3rd best defensive record in the division of the draw specialists. It was a difficult game, wasn't it? And you look at Watson on the left, who I thought was full of positive intent, but it was difficult for him to find a way through. Same with Roberts, but I do think that has to be a concern. And you made the point. We were just having a chat yesterday morning, weren't you? And you made the point that maybe on Tuesday night and in the last couple of games, but certainly on Tuesday night, you've looked and thought for the first time that's where you'd love a Jack Clarke just to turn nothing into something. Yeah. Now, like every team in the Championship are going to say that. So I get that it's an obvious point, but there were times last year when Sunderland were bailed out by Clarke, and that can be as useful when you're at the top of the division as you can when you're floundering at the other end. And Mundell, I think, has been a miss because of that. Sunderland just looked a bit predictable for me, I thought, the other night in attack.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. You know, it's obviously it's highlighted in more by the fact that Mundell isn't there at the moment because, you know, he had made a really good job of filling the kind of Jack Clarke gap. But I just thought on Tuesday, you were watching it, and, you know, there was a lot of games Sunderland played in last season that were like that, tight games, not an awful lot in it, and yet one moment of magic from Clarke, certainly obviously in the first half of the season, and then obviously the back end of the season before, just won them the game or got them into a position where the complexion of the game was completely transformed and it became a different game, and Sunderland then went on and won it. You know, I do think that, you know, Rig is a brilliant footballer. We know that. Bellingham is a fantastic footballer. Roberts has his moments, you know, doesn't do it as consistently as Clarke. I don't think any of them are the real X-factor player that Jack Clarke was for Sunderland. And maybe they're just... Now, like you say, Jack Clarke will be the X-factor player for any team in the Championship. We know that. So, you know, Sunderland can't can't live on the fact that they had him and now they don't. But obviously, you had kind of Ahmad as that X Factor player. You had Clark as that X Factor player. They probably don't quite have that at the moment. What they do have, though, at the moment is as you alluded to, injury issues, suspension issues. And to be fair to Le Bris and the players, I also don't think it's a coincidence that this kind of sticky patch has coincided with the first real time this season where Sunderland have had multiple first-choice players out at the same time, often in the same position. And that has been a factor, hasn't it? To be fair.
And Le Bris was asked, wasn't he, earlier this week in his pre-match presser on Monday that about January and Sunderland's plan for the January transfer window. And I thought his answer was interesting because he talked about how he doesn't know at this stage because the squad is going to be strengthened by several returning players in the next few weeks. And he mentioned the likes of Samed, Abdullahi, obviously Brown's out injured, Mundell. But I take that. You look at the back line, there's no way you need anyone in defence, although you could argue you're
right
still
back.
Without an orthodox right back cover.
Yeah.
Clearly the midfield's all right. But in the attack, obviously Mundell's a big miss. But then you've got Abdullahi to come in. And we don't know. We can't judge him because we haven't seen him kick a ball. I do think going into January, one extra player, one extra attacker would make a significant difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
the obvious priority, I think.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair because, as we've said there, to be fair to Isidore, Connolly and Mayenda, they've all made a decent kind of fist of plugging the gap at various stages this season. But it's just maybe starting to look at the minute like, they're missing that natural goal scorer that we always kind of felt they might do.
And even if it's not a number 9, I just think across the forward line, like, so Watson, again, like huge talent, clearly. And I thought he did well the other night, but he's 18. Roberts, there's no real obvious. He's not, clearly Al-Shish and Barr aren't going to get a kick, are they? So you may as well discount them. If they can get rid of them in January, they're going to. So I think that leaves you short of versatile attacking players who can maybe cover on the left or play across the forward line. I think that's the area where
I mean, the one who falls into that position obviously is Alexic, and we saw a first little glimpse of him in the Millwall game. Didn't get on Tuesday night. I mean, he's an interesting one because I clearly his lack of being able to speak English when he first came over, I think, has been a much bigger problem than anyone maybe anticipated, even internally within Sunderland. But he's an under-21 international who's now been called up to their senior Serbian squad on more than one occasion. We're nearly into December now. It kind of feels like we need to see a bit more of him soon, don't we?
Yeah, I know, and Le Bris clearly just doesn't think he's ready.
He's ready, yeah. And I know you've got to, he's the one who's seeing him every week, every day in training. You've got to trust his judgment on that. But it just feels a bit like, he's one who could have made a bit of a difference, maybe, but clearly just isn't ready for that.
And the indications were when he signed, weren't they were hugely excited about what he could do in the long term. But I think there was a hope that he'd be able to not hit the ground running, but certainly make a bit of an impact in the shorter term. But then Poveda hardly kicked the ball so far. When I'm talking there about like versatile players who can make a difference across the forward line, well, Poveda's exactly that, isn't he? But he hasn't kicked the ball yet. Which
and for all that we've praised Sunderland's recruitment and everything, and quite rightly, I think there has been a sea change, and I think most fans would concede, even if through gritted teeth for a few of them, that Christian Speakman had a very good summer. Samed and Abdullahi, the fact that it's now December and they haven't, very nearly December, and they haven't kicked a ball yet. I mean, that's not great, is it?
And the same really can be said for Poveda. I mean, how much football has Poveda played? I've got the stats in front of me, but he's barely featured. And that has to be a worry, especially with someone like, I guess, with someone like Abdullahi and Alexic. You say, well, look,
longer term.
Samed's on loan for the season. Poveda's a more senior, experienced player. So that's the disappointment there. And I think especially in games like that, Le Bris, how many one change, 2 changes the other night, the double change when he brought Elise and Mayendra on at the same time, left Rusin on the bench. He's another one who clearly he's not having, isn't going to feature. You wouldn't be surprised to see him go in January, would you? Al-Shish, is he on the bench to fill it out? He's not going to get a kick, is he? So for all Le Bris talks about the depth in his squad, at the minute, when he looks to his bench, how many of those attacking players does he clearly trust to go on? And
well, I was just going to get to that because, again, I think we'd all absolutely agree that Regis Le Bris has been absolutely brilliant for Sunderland. Tactically superb, gets the club, all of that. In these last 2 games, he has been strangely reluctant, I think, to turn to his subs or just change things in general. Now, maybe, as you quite rightly say, he's just looking at people like Awashish and Barn, thinking, well, I just do not fancy you in any way, shape or form. Pretty much come hell or high water, I'm not going to bring you on. But in the Millwall game, Alexic was the only player who came on. In the game on Tuesday night, obviously, Elise for 09, yep, fine. I can see that. Bit more legs in the fullback position. Maybe Elise's not ready to play a full game, all of that. But there was only one other attacking change that he made, wasn't there? Which was
Mayenda.
Mayenda, that's right. But he had Connolly on the bench, who he didn't bring on. So it just felt a little bit like in those last 20 minutes when, it was pretty clear that Sunderland, had pretty much run out of ideas. Yes, you don't want to lose the game. I fully accept that. But trying a little bit something different in the final third, I felt might have been worthwhile.
Yeah, Conley was the one that I think just to freshen it up a bit, I think. Fresh legs against the defence that was solid, but had been up against it. So will have been mentally and physically fatigued in the final stage of the game. I think when you look at the others, Alexic, I know he'd come on at Millwall, but West Brom are really mature championship side, aren't they? And we saw later on that there was a threat. There was a threat going forward when Dobbin missed the chance. I wonder there whether Le Bris thought, well, all right, we might not be able to find a way to win this. Hellfire, let's not lose it.
Yeah, which is fair.
But then when you look at the others, like Zach Johnson and Yelder, clearly he didn't need them. Awashish and Rusin, well, comes back to the fact that the fact that they haven't played any football, and Le Bris in varying ways in the summer. Well, he was clear with Awashish and Bar that they were a bit.
And I think we can. Well, I think we can now toss Rusin into that as well.
Yeah, he suggested similar in the summer, didn't he? I think if you've got Mundle starting on the left and Watson there on the bench, or if you had a fully fit Pervader sat there on the bench, then he'd turn around and maybe look and think he had the options there to make a change. I just wonder whether he looked at the bench and kind of didn't trust those who were there to go on and make an impact, which is telling in itself, which again emphasises the point about January, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where the improvement needs to be because, it's clearly not a good situation to be in if you've got a 9-man bench. 2 or 3 of them are defenders who you're only going to bring on if you need them, and 2 or 3 of the other ones you're not going to bring on whatever happens because you just don't fancy them. Let's look ahead.
I was going to say you're there. We're recording this Thursday morning. You're speaking to Le Bris this afternoon, and then you're
and then I'm going to Bramall Lane. Yeah,
I mean at the minute, Sheffield United, the way they're playing, especially at home, you made the point about Leeds, but it is one of the ultimate championship tests, isn't it?
Well, it looks like a cracker, doesn't it? Friday night, Bramall Lane, they're going to be absolutely bang up for it. You forget that they actually started on -2 points, didn't they? So, they clearly are one of, if not the team in the championship thus far. It'll be interesting to see how Sunderland stand up to it, really. Be interesting to see what team is available, obviously, first and foremost. But then, at a time when they're on their poorest run of the season, this is a big test for Sunderland. I think we'll find out quite a lot about this side on Friday night. Can they go there? And for all that they're not in scintillating form, and for all that they, we strongly suspect there'll still be a couple of absences dotted around the field. Can they dig in and get something? I think this is one where we've talked about this run of draws. I think if you offer Sunderland a draw now, tomorrow night, they'd snap your hand off and take it, wouldn't they? Keep that unbeaten run going. Get something out of the game, I think would be a positive result.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you look at the games to come after that. I think Stoke and Bristol City both look presentable home games, don't they? I know Swansea are playing well away from home, but it's nowhere near as daunting as Millwall or Sheffield United. Then again, Norwich and Blackburn over Christmas. I think that's a decent run that Sunderland have got coming up. I do think Sunderland deserve, I get the frustration, especially in Millwall where you concede in the last minute, but Millwall are a team of powerhouses, aren't they?
Yeah.
Awful place to go. West Brom, like a real mature championship
And a
team.
similar kind of test coming with Sheffield United under Wilder.
That's the point I'm going to make. You've got like Alex Mowat and Carl Bartley and the likes in West Brom's team. Sheffield United's a similar challenge. So I do think Sunderland deserve credit. I know we keep going back to it, but this young, relatively inexperienced team, likes of Watson, Isidore, still adapting to the championship. I do think Sunderland deserve credit for being able to stand firm in those games, stand tall and kind of give what they get against teams like Millwall and West Brom. And the defensive solidity, for all we talked about the lack of goals, I know they conceded late on at Millwall and 2 against Coventry, but the defensive solidity is still the foundation for the success this season, isn't it?
I was just gonna say that, and you strongly suspect that tomorrow night Ballard and Metham are going to be 2 absolutely vital players for Sunderland, because they're going to set the tone for the rest of the performance, aren't they? They're going to be the ones tasked with keeping Sheffield United out. They're the experienced heads. They're the leaders, really, in this dressing room. And yeah, I think they'll be vital. I mean, it sounds like, and again, we'll see if Le Bris updates on this when I'm up there in a few hours' time, so this might be well out of date. But I suspect even if potentially players are available, we might still see the same back four as we saw on Tuesday night, just because O'Nien, Ballard, Metham, Hume feels like a really solid back four to be going to Bramall Lane with.
Well, it's interesting the back, isn't it? Because after the game on Tuesday, I asked Le Bris and made the point of defensively, you've got Sirkin coming back. You've had Elise on the bench there today. You've got some real tough decisions to make in the coming weeks. And he kind of said, predictably, yeah, that's what you want. That's what you need.
Yeah.
We need options. But I think when you look at the defence, at the start of the season, if you were talking about the pecking order, you'd have said, Ballard and probably at the heart of the defence. Yeah. For me at the minute, I think Chris Metham has to be the first defender's name on the team sheet. He's been immense, hasn't he? Week in, week out. Thought he was class again the other night.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Metham is your first choice centre half. I think Trey Hume plays as a right back or slots in at left back if you need him there, like it is. I think both of them at the minute are the 2 nailed on ones.
And Certain when he's fit plays.
Certain when he's fit.
Brilliant. It's that last centre half spot that's interesting, isn't it? Elise, O'Nien, Ballard, three like really good options.
Good options. Yeah, absolutely. Just like I say, well, it'll depend on how fit Sirkin is, if he's fit, won't it? But it feels like probably to throw him straight in
a game like that
would sit, with not having been on a bench or anything, would seem. I'd be surprised if we weren't looking at the same back four. I don't think Elise starts. I think yet. I think we're probably looking at the same back four.
Especially when you've got a week before with Sirkin, you've got a week. I mean, we might be wrong. I mean, he might tell you this.
That's it. He might come today and say, he's flying.
The week before, with 8 days after before the Stoke game, it feels more likely, I think, doesn't it? That you give Sirkin time. We'll see. Big game though, and I think it'll be a good game.
It is. And as I say, you were there on Tuesday. I'm there at Bramall Lane Friday. Keep an eye on We Are Sunderland, obviously, later on today, on Thursday, for all the everything coming out of the press conference, and obviously Friday for the match itself. Thanks to the Fans Museum. Thanks to Cospex Opticians. Thanks to yourself, Dom. Do I ask you for a prediction? Dare I throw it to you?
It's got to be draw. It's got to be draw.
Yeah, 1-1.
Off the bounce. I'm sat on a fence today, not a seat. I'll say 1-1.
Yeah, I'll happily row him with 1-1. We'll go 1-1.
Stay, join for the chat. Stay for the outlandish predictions.
Exactly. And then we can still have the glass half full, glass half empty debate ad nauseum, can't we? That still rings true. So we'll be back at the start of next week to dissect what happened at Bramall Lane and chat about whether the glass is half full or half empty. I better get a glass, actually. That's what I need to do for the next video. Get a glass. See if it's half full or half empty.
Just spend the first 10 minutes.
Exactly. That's what we need. Right, enough of that madness. Join us. Join us for that. Have a good weekend, and hopefully it's a good Friday night down in Sheffield. Thanks for watching. We Are Sunderland.